last paragraph, the teaching of Buddha can be explained with the basis of spiritual foundation, method, and result. This part. From today, again, we resume our study. The teaching of Buddhism. When you say Buddhism, we're just looking at it as a noun, but it is actually two nouns together. So it means Buddha and teaching. So although we call it Buddhism, this means the teaching of Buddha. So Buddhism doesn't mean it is an organization or just a religious body. But when we think, do not think about the change of the world, but just think of it as the teaching of Buddha. And we call the disciples of Buddha as the students. So the teachings of Buddha can be explained from the spiritual foundation, method, and also result. So what is the foundation here, or what is the basis? Here it is written the spiritual foundation. So it has the basis of the philosophy. So no matter how much we try to follow Buddhist teaching with meditation or reciting mantras, but the foundation should be having the proper perception. And in order to do that, you have to study the proper sutras, or you also have to study the sastras, or else the logical explanations can have no meaning. So without studying them, if you only pray, and if everyone is just reciting the same sutras, and if you ask if that's not Buddhism, then we can say that is not Buddhism. Although it is decorated as Buddhism, but as per the Buddha's teaching, you have to change your mind and you have to get rid of your sufferings. But it doesn't happen that way. And the most important thing is you have to understand Buddha's teaching at most, and that is from the sutras or the well-learned teachers, or in other words, who does not have errors with Buddha's teaching, or who is only concentrating in one part, and not even those kind of teachings, or the teachings which are not slanted to one side, just like Korean Buddhism. And that's why we believe that we do not need to be taught, but also we believe that those people who follow the disciples, they are also wrong. But a teacher should not have those kind of wrong ideas while teaching the students. So when we say the foundation, it is the theological basis. And what is the main essence of it? That is the dependent arising. And everyone, there is no being that has the independent I, and even the human being, we also do not have the independent I. And if you say the spirits might be independent, but even the spirits, they got together and it has been formed, and if that dispersed, the mind also tends to disperse. So there's nothing that has an independent ego. And so a person, we do not have the perception from the first moment, but it has been formed and we have acquired that. And so with the dependent arising as the basis, you have to think. And if you have the basis of the creation, then the practice cannot happen. if you believe that Buddha has created something and with his omniscience and if you believe that he has created the whole world, then the practice itself cannot happen, because if the God has created everything, then there's nothing that we can do because everything is in Buddha's hand. So everything happens with the relation and everything disperses with the relation. So everything occurs and disappears and everything changes, and that's why we call it uh, uh, the that's why we call it everything disappears and nothing is forever. And amongst them, how can we achieve our happiness? And if you remove yourself from the agony and also if you remove yourself agony from attachments, um, then only you can achieve happiness. Without this philosophy as the basis, we cannot say we are studying Buddhism and so sitting cross-legs, or even if you are reciting sutras for thousands of times. Although you are reciting thousands of times, people who smoke, they cannot even cut down their cigarettes. So it is no use even if you recite them by heart, and even if you recite Avalokitesvara for thousands of times, even if your heart, if you only believe that she blocks all the bad luck in your mind, then it does not really get achieved. So when you are reciting Avalokitesvara, you have to try to become similar to her with the compassion, and while doing that, you have the compassion in your heart and you can also become happy. And so nowadays, people don't try to change on their own, but they only concentrate on changing their outer appearance. So although people say their practices similar to Buddha, the outcome is very different. So that's why I say when you are doing farming, you have to it's very difficult to identify the rice when it's a small, still small, and when it's grown, you can make a difference. But when it's still in at this very early stage, you cannot make difference. In olden times, the pale rice, it was very, it was very it was very tall, so it was very difficult to make a difference. So when you see the pale rice, when you try to identify when you are still at the very baby stage, it's very difficult to identify. But how do you identify? You identify when the sun is on that side. You have to see from the side because the pear rice has a very thin skin, and so when you see when the sun is rising or sun is setting, you can see the difference because of the color. And if you plug it, then you can know that that is not the one that you wanted, because once it grows up, it has a little thinner leaf and it's also a little lighter. That's why they should always see towards the sun and not against the sun. So when you go to plug it, you do it when in the morning or even in the evening when the sun is setting, and also when it's breezy. Because of the difference in the color, you can find out that that is the one that you want. And unlike the rice, you can see that the rice has the leg just like a Miss Korea, and also And also the other type of rice that's just like it has some segments where it's also reddish in color. And they are together. Uh, they're together with another type of plant, the peeled rice, and you can find out in that way. So you have plucked them before. So what I say is true, right? We have not done it. Just like that, even the study. You say you're reciting the Thousand Hands Sutra, and also you're going to uh, temples and those things. They're similar. Today I washed my hair in cold water, but then why would you wash your hair in the cold water when you have warm water? And also, I haven't eaten something fishy for a week, and those kind of thing. Although you do so many things like that, it doesn't have so much meaning. If you see the consequence in the end, then you need to have the sense of bodhisattva and also the compassion. And while listening to Buddha, you should know that that's your greed and that is not the correct one. And with the sense of discrimination, if you practice one by one, then the consequence will become better by better. But then those farmers, oh, I don't know what is the difference between the pearl rice and the rice. And when I go there, I don't see any difference. But in the end, that will all be the pearl rice farm. And when you walk by, there are also some farms where the half of them is the pearl rice and the other half is just the rice. That's the farm of those who have given up. And later, when you next year, because and also the pearl rice, they have packed themselves so well. The pearl rice, because they are almost like a water free. If they do not come out, even if they are soaked in water, they do not sprout. The sprout does not come out, but next spring it will start growing. Just like like when you try to study, you don't feel like studying, but when you try to study, you start falling asleep. And if you say, "Oh, I'm not sleepy," so I prayed Avalokitesvara and I started feeling sleepy, that is incorrect. If you pray, then you should become more conscious. But then once you start praying, you start feeling sleepy. It's just like the pear rice that's growing when it is not supposed to. Just like you, when you try to go to the way, because Venerable Jinok is asking me to pray all the time. So I woke up 4 o'clock in the morning. And what is the first thing that comes to your mind? I guess you haven't done it before. You don't want to wake up at 4 o'clock. That's the first hindrance. Inside the blanket, you wonder, do I have to do it or should I not do it? And then you will start making excuses of yesterday. Yesterday I couldn't do it because of this and because of that. And you will just decide to miss today. And that will be your first step. And later, again, if you have gotten rid of it and when you try to wash your face and then you start feeling sleepy. Once someone told me she was so sleepy that And she did not continue to the next part, but she just kept continuing what she was doing. After waking up, what comes to your mind? The things that you have to do that day, all the things that comes popping up in your mind. Today, the kimchi, should I buy two of them? Or no, maybe it's better if I buy radish. And if you continue doing that, then 1 hour just passed by. And although you think you have prayed, but nothing has been prayed actually. So the basis should always be firm. And also in olden time, those who does the rice farming, from the moment that they soak up the seed, and if you take them around and teach them, then they will know. But if they don't take them and if they don't show them, and about 20 years when they have not been able to find the farm they want to work in, and if they want to start up doing the agriculture, it's not possible to do it. And they will start getting angry too. Is my father angry at me because I was not able to find my own company? And they will start asking that questions too. Therefore, the teachings of Buddhism with the spiritual foundation and method and also the result, you can explain in this way. It is a method. Uh, Whether you can do it or not, it's all in the method. In maths, it's almost like a formula in the maths. So if you know how to solve the formula, then you will come to an answer. Just like that, the Buddha's teaching, if you understand well, and if you study the method well, and if you practice, then you will have a good result. If we do that, then the result will be there. If there is no foundation or if there is no method, then the result will not be there. Most of the things that we pray, it's even without the foundation. Just like if you do not try to grow the rice in this first stage, and if you try to plant it, it's almost like that. So you need to do the basic thing. And what is that? That is a proper thought, having the proper thoughts, and also meditation. The consequence is the property that comes to the practitioners when they achieve the stage of nirvana. The aftermath or bodhisattva, it's like when you become Buddha, there will be so many different consequences that come to you. Just like Shakyamuni, if you become Buddha, the things that we cannot even imagine, that you will get 10 powers, and you will have 6 supernatural powers. And because of that, unlike the common criminals, so different from us, very different from us, they will have that potential. In order to achieve these kind of properties, you need to make a proper cause and also consequence, the conditions. In Buddha's teaching, it's never there that if there is something that is not going to happen, you have to make it happen, or you just have to listen. So in order to make you have the result or become Buddha, then you have to plant the seed and you have to provide that kind of condition. That is the practice. All of a sudden, no consequence can come to you. That's almost like if you want to eat rice, then you have to wash the rice and you have to cook the rice and you have to eat. But when you try to eat and if you bring the sand and if you just pray at the sand doesn't become rice. Those kind of things doesn't happen. But then we also need to ask ourselves, why do we hope that something impossible can happen? There is something very foolish. Uh, foolish people, foolish people make rice out of sand, and wise people make rice out of rice, cook rice out of rice. Therefore, it's important to make that cause and result conditions. So, us praying for virtue or obeying the ancestors, is it possible to reach nirvana? It is impossible. The consequence is different. And also the cause and the condition to become Buddha has not been provided. It's almost like you want to plant the rice, but you are planting the beans. It is something that is not possible. Those are in part of the Buddhist practice. It is inside the system of our practice, just like Tibet and also in Korea. The Kishi, or the practice or the study, it's like planting the seed in or the teachings. You are providing the proper thought, and that you have to study for about 20 years. But then for you, if I ask you to study for 20 years, you cannot do it. So I'm asking you to continue doing this. So even if you're doing it for the rest of our lives, it's less than doing studying properly for 5 years. Why is that so? Because over there we do every day. We do every day, the whole day. Here we just do like once in a week, and we miss so many days because it's a new year or there's some personal problems, and so maybe in a year about there are 50 weeks, and maybe we are not even able to do 40 weeks. Those people come who religiously about maybe 40 to 45 weeks. And even if we say 45 weeks, it's almost like a month study for someone who does it every day for the whole life. If we talk about the density of the study, it's very less. We need to know that we already have the property or other properties or even the Buddha's 10 powers. Even this, when you study, if you ask, is this something that something you did not have has aroused? It is not so, but we have the character or ability to become so, but we were not able to do that. Why is it so? Because we had so many flows, and that we can see this way. If there's a camera lens, the camera lens should be very clear and clean, and even the angle should be right. Then only the proper image will come. But if the angle is wrong and if the camera is dirty or if the camera is not working properly, then you will not have the image that you wanted. It's similar to that. So therefore, but the glass itself, you clean it and if you try to increase the density, the glass itself has a potential to show the object properly. but it's not the same with the stone. If even if we try to carve the stone, it doesn't happen. It's almost similar to that. So it is not something that we did not have come out after our practice, but we had that before. And even our heart, we have so much agony, and our interest does not lie there, but we continue pursuing something that is futile, and we wander, and that's why the things that we have inside, we are not able to see the great power that we have, and we are not able to use that power too. So after Shakyamuni became Buddha, he found out that it is something that we already have. You know the stone that has the gold inside? We cannot just carve that stone and make the gold. We need to go through different process to make that into gold. And that process is almost like our practice, and then only we'll be able to take out the gold from the stone and make it into the gold that we know. But the process itself is not easy. Just like this, why is it difficult for us to know that there is a gold when it's mixed with the stone? It's simple, because there are so many other materials that mixed with the gold, and so it's difficult for us to know that it's a gold. Just like that in our mind, when it's so distracted with agony and also other thoughts, it's not easy to find out the innocent thoughts in our mind. Therefore, we have them inside us as a potential. But if we don't try to develop that, and if we don't try to believe that we have it, and then everything becomes very futile. I have bought a land, and how much is that? And all our thoughts are messed up around there. And if your thoughts are so messed up around there, then how can the thoughts that want to observe yourself can come out? It can never be out. So practice itself is almost like crafting. If that is so, then all the things that we believe that will bring us happiness. For example, we are driving small cars, but now driving bigger cars could make us happy. They would come instantly and they would disappear in an instant. And sometimes they bring you agony, and sometimes they bring you anger, and sometimes it is very futile. So, Mr. Kim, yesterday when he was talking, I thought he has become finally the practitioner about 1/3. He's about 90 years old, and his wife passed away. And when the politicians came, the politics that he did until 89 years old, he came to know that everything was futile. Now this year he's 90 years old. So the things that he did until last year, everything was very futile. But even the age of 90, it is also futile. Although it seems like everything is there, but when when you finally arrive there, then everything is less than nothing. Whether it's your children or your grandchildren, doesn't really make difference. When when you have lost all your energy, then even when your grandchildren has come, you will not feel so much different. But because of that, you claim that you are living all your life for the good of your children and your grandchildren. But when you die, they become more happy because they're like, ha 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 ha, my grandmother died. Uh, and also, they're so busy eating whatever is on the table. And also, children, they're so busy looking for your savings book, and your grandchildren will be so busy eating the food that's on the table. Even when I see on Kakao, they write, "Oh, I find my grandchildren so cute." But then I thought, even now, your eyes, you cannot see through. How much wound do you have to give yourself? Then only you understand. Just understand that there's a relation there in this life, and so I met you, and so you should teach them what is the right way to live. But you just assume that when you see your grandchildren, you are out of your mind. And when your children, when something goes wrong to your children, then you cry all your heart out. And even if you do that, even if I say so, you just say, "Oh, that is so," but I know that you will not act what I tell you. And I also know very well that there's no use in telling you. Even in the only in the end, you will say that the things I said, you will know what I mean. I should do a high comedy because if I just make a story, you don't understand. But but I should do something that you find it funny after you go to bed. So I even the teachings I should teach you that's memorable for you 20 to 30 years later. But later, about 20 to 30 years later, even if you say whatever I said was true, there's no use because there's no more time. And even if I tell you this, you don't listen and you still lose your focus. And I know that you still have things for your grandchildren, but I'm also saying it because I need to say this. Why am I going through such a difficult life? I'm doing it for my children. But look at what your children are doing when you have become old. So nowadays, I'm thinking if I should make a song, if I should compose a song. Oh, there's a song, What's Wrong with My Age? It's the best age to love. Do you know what song I will make? If you have eaten the seaweed soup after giving birth to your children, that's going to be the title. Have I eaten the seaweed soup after giving birth to that child? Why was I why was I foolish so that I could not even um, distinguish the child or even just a living being? Seems like you have not brought up a child, but just a figure. 10 months you have given up your body, and while giving birth, your life was at stake, and while bringing them up, mental, your mentality was at stake. But after they've been brought up, you don't know what you have done wrong, but they just take whatever that you have and And in about like twice a year, they come and say, how have you been? But sometimes they just call and say, Mother, how have you been? But even that, it seems like because there is no place for them to go during the New Year, so it seems like they come. Well, if you tell me that that's how people live, then I have nothing to say. If you say that's how everyone lives, then there are also some people who are worse than that. And there are also people who cry their heart out because they drank the seaweed soup. The life of our life in samsara, we have two eyes that we walk around, but there are so many people who doesn't even know how to be a human being. But even that, because parents, they still have their love for their child. Even if your child does not behave properly, you do not scold your child. Never in your life you blame your children. Even in the nursing homes, there are some people who do that. Oh, my son bought me this. My son is really good to me. My daughter-in-law is also good to me. I know very well they do worse. The parents whose son and the daughter-in-law is good to them, they don't even say it. But once in a while, just because they send you some honey, they say, this is what my son sent me. Imagine why you say that when they have not given you in your everyday life. So they are those who does not even get frustration from their grandchildren, even during the New Year. So while I'm saying this, I'm telling you not to be fooled. It's not like you can give up your child, but keep your balance and just know that they have come to you out of the relation of this world. But even though people who have come to you, those have come with a good relation, that's also good. But if they're coming with a bad virtue or a bad relation, then it creates a great harm. But you still claim that's your child, and so you do everything for them, and your life comes to an end in a disaster. It's foolish even that way. This potential is already inherent in our spirit. It's not that just like a mountain and rock cannot achieve omniscience with their practice. Without proper basis, nothing can be formed. So inside us, if there's something that we do, and if we do practice, it's not that we get Buddha's power because someone gives to us from external forces, but it's already there in us. And even the wisdom, we become bright if we just throw away our foolish ideas. It's just like the light. When the darkness comes, if there is no light. But if you put on the light, then it becomes very bright. The darkness disappears. So when we say it is dark, it means there is no light. So to us, we have the characteristics of Buddha. We have them all, but we are not able to make the starting point for that, but we do something else. Once someone said, one monk died sitting. We can also do that, but we just don't do that. This time, the Tibetan old monk, he's about 81 years old. He's just 1 year more than Dalai Lama, but he's very healthy. So I was drinking a tea with him in the hotel, and the jacket that I gave him, he was like, "It is so good. It would be so nice if I wear it if when it's cold." And so when I asked him, "Are you prepared to end this life?" he said, "Yes, I am." And when I asked, "Will you be able to leave this world in peace?" He said, "That's very easy." He said, "That's very easy." Those characteristics, if you ask if you don't have them, we all have them. No one answers. So we are asking you to study them. At the time that we feel the most difficult or when we are at the worst time, all the property that I value the most, they all disappeared. If you think about the dependent arising, then it is actually voidness. I never had one. So even when you die, you'll go with the empty hand. Before in the coffin, when they were requested, they put in the money for the death trouble. They are putting everything. So I thought maybe they're putting it in the coffin, but the person who is burying the coffin, he just put everything in the in his pocket. So they actually even give up that money. So it is just a commission fee for the person who is doing the funeral. So it's not like the ghost stands up and say, "Oh, that's my money," and take it, but that's how we live. So we come we came empty-handed, didn't we? And everything disappear. And when we think, those people who think that that's yours, they lose their spirit because they think, "Oh, that's mine. If I have done this, I would not have lost it." And I feel very depressed. And when I had money, but now when I don't have it, they don't value me, and they only show your anger and grief, and so humiliation. And you also say because of your husband or because your children, all sorts of different agony arises, and your mind is not at the right mind. But then if you have the right perception, and if you think that, "Oh, that's not actually mine, and there's nothing that I can say which is mine, I came empty-handed, so even today I should try to earn hard, and I should not starve." You should think of it in that way. If you have the right perception, then you are able to live your life that way. So, so they're already there inside our consciousness. So the mountain, rocks, or cows, no matter how much grass the cow eats, and no matter how much the cow practices Buddhism, it is not actually practicing of Buddhism. I've never heard, or you have never heard, cow gaining enlightenment. So achieving the omniscience and also achieving nirvana is if you do not have a proper perception of Buddha's teaching, or if you do not practice as per his teaching, it is not possible. So the omniscience or the properties of Buddha inside the consciousness belong to the basic spirit that we can achieve through our practice. So they are the values that can be achieved through practice, but they are not possible to attain with just outside external standard. Here, we refer to the spiritual basis, to the potential of the heart, the actual nature of the heart, which can attain the essential or absolute conscious, absolute enlightenment. The spiritual mind, the spiritual method has method and also wisdom. So you need to have the proper perception. In order to achieve the enlightenment, you need the method. So with the method of removing the greediness, or by throwing away the greediness, you practice offering. You are doing that in order to throw away the greed. You should not give other meaning to it. Therefore, in reality, the rich a rich person with greediness is difficult for them to achieve Buddhahood. So no matter how much they sit and practice, so during the time of Buddha, the Siddhartha, although he donated all his entire savings, he was not able to throw away his greed. So the Buddha did not accept him. So by accumulating the method and also the wisdom, you regain the mind of the Buddhism. So just like the diamond or just like the rock of the gold, you recover the gold. Although the gold is there, it does not act of gold. We do not call the rock the goal. So you need a process. So in the Buddhist philosophy, it's very important to know these bases. They are not made with some imagination, but they are something that can actually be double checked. So it's not like other Western philosophy or other religion which does not have practice, or it is not it is not something that talks about your theory, but if you practice that, it actually comes true. So they are actually a method of practice. Why do we say the Western politics is wrong? We say they're similar, but we still say they're wrong because if we do whatever they tell us to do, maybe we still have delusions, and also the delusions still exist, and also the human desire also is there. So it's just that we bring the gold, the rock with the gold, and we just build a wall around it. So no matter how many years you build the wall around it, you're not actually able to bring out the gold from the stone. So most of the Western philosophy talks about the idea. So, with the notion that it's created by the God, or it has been there since the beginning, they just try to fit it in, and therefore it does not fit. So, in a simple way, if they just say everything has been created, it's very simple, but there's no way to prove that it has been created. And therefore, they just ask you to believe. Because it's difficult to explain, they just force you to believe. And if you believe in the wrong manner, then it becomes a blind faith. It's very important to understand in Buddhist philosophy, they are not made from imagination, but no matter how much you try, uh, if they are not, if they are not, when they were talking about the Buddha actually coming into, uh, what they were able to see with your eyes, and when they're able to save the save so many people through different ages. They said in order to remove the Mayana, they want to study the Mayana, but Nagarjuna was so great that it's not that he just argued with them in a logic. After experimenting what that is, they should talk about it. So Nagarjuna became the Naruto. He actually said he'll practice the Mayana. But if but in order to check if it works or not, you have to do it. So he, after practicing, when he became the Nagarjuna, he met he met the Bodhisattva of wisdom, Manjushri, and he said, amongst what Buddha said, there's nothing that's false. So just because we have no idea, it seems like they don't exist. Just like the idea of Einstein, those who doesn't have any idea about it, if they talk about it, it becomes something that's also very vague. And also Hopkins' Big Bang Theory, that's also something that is very vague. How can the universe just explode all of a sudden? They should. We also think that there should be something for them to explode. But if you study the physics, then if you study the physics in detail, it becomes possible that they explode. So it becomes possible, and since it worked out, the Nagarjuna said the Hinayana made a mistake. So you're doing it, you're studying at a very low level, and Nagarjuna was also studying Hinayana. And Nagarjuna, in fact, he became the leader of the Hinayana, and when Nagarjuna wanted to put it a debate, everyone ran away and they were not able to do that. So it is not emotional argument whether you're on my side or that side, but yeah, when you actually practice, it came true. So there were nothing for them to argue back. That's why Nagarjuna, when he checked why it became so, people with a low understanding, Buddha has put it with at the low level, and because they have a low level, they are not able to see the high level, and because of that, they thought that the high level doesn't exist. And so, since when Nagarjuna said they can come true, and so there's nothing to be suspicious about. And in order to explain that they are all true, he wrote a book. And after writing the book, he started explaining. And so the Mayana became even more prominent. So it is not a theory of idea. All Western philosophy is a study of ideas, but Buddhism isn't. If they are just a result of a mere imagination, then no matter how much you try, you cannot achieve, you cannot enter to the road of the enlightenment. Yeah, I heard that there is a imaginary pregnancy. Um, Even after 10 months, no matter how much you imagine, you're not able to have baby. Why is that so? Because that's imagination. And the study of ideology, idea, it ends with the study of idea, but there's no proof. So the famous Western philosophers, they thought a lot, but in fact they committed suicide, and they would just wander around the street. And there were also some people who died on the street because their agony never disappeared. So sometimes when I see people studying Western philosophy, I feel a little sorry for them because no result is out of it. It's almost like a brain exercise because they have used their brain for so long. If they understand, if they study Buddhist teaching, then maybe they will have better understanding. But because of their cunningness, they don't try to practice, and maybe there's also side effects. So I think there could be a positive effect and also side effect. And when you talk with those kind of people, then I feel a little difficult. So when I say this, because when I say something, then they try to divert your way out. If you're busy, you should go. Does your leg hurt? Of course, you won't be able to achieve a result, and you won't even be able to explain how you can gain enlightenment. So, of course, it's not possible. I don't think there's any philosophy that explains about enlightenment, whether it's Socrates or Plato or Aristotle. Even they, uh, although they talk about so many different philosophy, they don't talk about achieving enlightenment with your absence of agony, but they talk about grand things like know yourself. But even if they said know yourself, they were not able to know themselves. That they didn't know that they're just void and they just go through the circle of life. And so for others, they said know yourself, but Socrates did not say I came to know myself. I don't think Socrates ever said he knows himself. But Buddha said, I know what kind of being I am. Essentially, I am nothing, I am void. But until today, I came to know that I existed because of the different relations. If you say you are empty, essentially, then all your attachments they disappear. If you study in detail, by nature, essentially everything was created because of karma, but essentially they're just zero. All the attachments, if you will not have those kind of debate whether you want to cut your hair today or perm your hair, but your daily life, you just think that maybe for others you don't want to give discomfort, but then the hair itself, it is just a protein, so it itself is not clean. So no matter how much you wash your hair and also do the hair coating and even spray perfume, but if it falls into your eyes, you think it's dirty and you take it out. There's no one who eats the rice with the hair falling into it. It's just something that's there. So if it turns gray because of your age, then it just turns gray. And if it falls, then it also just falls. But it seems like you have a lot of gray hair. Your hair grayed a lot. If you don't want to show that, then shave like me. then you won't be able to see that it is not gray.
그런 안허에
With the open mind, you have to inspect those basic ideas.
열린 마음으로 이런 기본적 원리를 잘 점검을
You
해
have to inspect,
수행하는데 그렇게 점검을 다
and
해서
when you study them,
또 이제
because of your karma,
근데 이제 보면 자기 어디
when I
성에
say one thing, you just fall deep into it, and
이렇게 얘기를 해줘도 뭐 고기만 콕 까져가지고
if I ask you to recite the mantras, I feel so much difficulty because of those people.
아니 나 그런 보살들 때문에 내가 죽겠네.
When I ask you to recite mantras, they don't come to the teaching. And when I ask why didn't you come,
불교도 법들 안 나와.
they argue me back saying everything's useless. So why can't I just recite the mantras? When we have so many side dishes in front of us,
여기에 반찬 여러 가지가 있을 때
if I say, this radish is delicious and it's good for my health, if I say just because of one thing,
이게 몸에 참 좋다.
you cannot eat the kimchi for 10 to 20 years alone.
총각김치만 먹을 수 없잖아.
And there are still a lot of people like that. And they keep saying meaningless ideas,
자꾸 뻘소리를 해서
very narrow ideas.
얘기들을 자꾸 해서.
If you approach with a prejudice that's intact with other philosophical ideas, then it will be difficult for you to discover these ideas in an objective way. So you should not have prejudice. And even in Western countries, a lot of people have this kind of prejudice. And after studying the different methods to study them in total, they should study step by step. But the Westerners, even when they recite the mantras or pray, they are not very used to it. For them, it just seems like meditation is something grand. So they put the meditation as something healing. And so even the psychologists, they have not even meditated, but they just they put it the program that others do it. But when I actually studied, I found a lot of flaws in it. And so you need to understand the idea first, and if you after your practice, if you teach, that's fine. But without you practicing yourself, just as doctor, because of the data, if the doctor tells them to do it, it is not happening. Analyze the doubt, and if the consequence is acceptable logically, then at the time you have to accept it itself. There's a need to study it as it is, and there's also need to study the result. In Buddhism, there are so many things that the science has not discovered yet. So amongst Buddhist teaching, there are many contents that science has not been able to approach. But because science has not been able to approach, it's not because science was not able to approach, but science did not have time and also effort to study in detail. But later, if you inspect, the teachings of Buddha is actually based on science. They'll be able to know that it is not much different from science. Although there are so many contents like that, for example, even Dr. Jung, even though Even the Freud studied modern philosophy, modern psychology. If you put with the Buddhist scale and a lot of terms Buddhist theories, because of the gap in the science, they are not able to analyze them. And so, with the psychology, when they try to imply that to the modern science, there is a lot of problems. Because the psychologists, they don't accept the previous life, but they just talk about the phenomena of this life, and so they're not able to answer questions about the previous life. There are a lot of people who remember their previous life in a precise manner. And Jung felt sorry about it, and he felt bad that science was trying to deteriorate the result that has been taken up from the study for 2,600 years. But if you study in detail with the science, I don't think it's so far that they'll be able to prove the previous life. Your previous life, you accept them as it is, and with the power of science, the with the power of science, the method to calculate your previous life. The movement of psychology and also your current status of mind. If there's only formula that we can calculate, then we can actually calculate your previous life. We can also do it in a mathematical way. But those theories, there's no religion that provides those theories as precisely as Buddhism. Therefore, it seems like there isn't much to say about this. But if these are proved scientifically, it's not that you just follow the sutras, but you have to accept that you will be able to accept it in a very logical way. Even Buddhism has never asked you to take it. But all the time, Buddhism has asked you to follow it if you find it rational to follow. It has never happened in Buddhist history that you just accept it. As spoken before, this Abhidharma is based on the method and also the practice of wisdom, and we take the consequence of the result and also the Buddhist teaching of the wisdom and method. The rest we'll do next class.